You're listening to the We Are Libertarians podcast network. Find all of our shows at wearelibertarians.com.
Are you a diehard comic book collector?
Or maybe a lapsed fan?
Maybe even someone who has never picked up a comic book in their life. Hi, I'm Remso Martinez.
And I'm Mark Claire. Every single Wednesday at the Second Print Comics podcast, Remso and I take a deep dive into the storylines, character arcs, moments, and events that made us the fans we are today.
Tune in every Wednesday for new episodes available on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, and wherever else podcasts are available.
Check out more from the Second Print Comics podcast at secondprintcomics.com.
Prepare yourself. You're on the run with Remso W. Martinez.
I completely forgot how I was going to intro the show. This is the struggle, Chris. This is the everyday struggle. Anyway, you finally moved into a new place.
Yeah.
Good for you.
Thank you.
You and I have both achieved something. We're very much the same. We fulfilled the libertarian podcaster dream of moving out of our parents' places.
Yeah, I know. My mom, at 38, mom was getting a little upset at me and said, "You've got to find your own place now." No, I think everybody who listens, longtime We Are Libertarians listeners know that I've been living in a luxury apartment with an open floor concept. And it's nice and it worked for one person, but I will be getting married in less than 2 months, and she has a 3-year-old. So an 800-foot square apartment for 3 people is just not going to do it. So we rented a house.
You just have the 8-year-old sleep in the cabinet.
Well, she has
have you never seen Aristocrats where they stick the kittens in the corner? It could work.
Seriously, when I saw that, I tried to do that, and I broke a dresser as a kid.
Oof.
Especially since I was a fat kid. It was a bad idea. No, yeah. It's been like everybody in my life must just think I'm so chaotic, and listeners too, because I'm totally off schedule because I had COVID, and then, that knocks you out for 3 weeks. And then I'm moving, which knocks you out for 3 weeks. So it's just like my life is in turmoil. I'm about almost back to routines and normal, but yeah, it's been hell. When you haven't moved in 9 years, and you're slowly moving your things over, and she's got her house and I've got storage units and stuff at parents' house, and she's got stuff, it's been a nightmare. But we're really excited where we're at. We're downtown. We're in a very yuppie part of town. Parks within walking distance, 258 trendy restaurants. Everyone's like a CFO or, Eli Lilly's. Yeah. And then there's me. They're like, "What do you do?" I'm like, "Well, I shit talk on the internet." And, but here we are. Yeah.
It's not an easy job, but it's honest.
Yeah.
Yeah. The whole purpose of bringing you on was just proof of life because people were getting worried.
I seriously, Remso, this, other than a couple pat downs, which I'm almost contractually obligated to do, I haven't done a podcast in 3 weeks, maybe.
It feels weird. I was gone throughout most of August through September. So some people were like, you always sound like exhausted, or you're in a different place, or you're recording in your car. I have recorded more podcasts in my car than I think any other person who hosts a podcast ever, because I made a promise to never miss a show. And I've had to air like episodes from other shows I've been on, but for the most part, it's like, I've recorded stuff while I'm in bed. I've recorded stuff in a car. I've recorded in hotel rooms. I've recorded in my office. I've recorded in hotel conference rooms. Like it's one of those situations where it's just been like, you get the shit for free. And at least I'm coming to you with stuff that I, for the most part, do care about and do want to share with you. So be grateful, motherfuckers.
Yeah. I wish I were more like you and Brian, where you guys are much more consistent. I wish I had that. I mean, I think I have a fallback position in that we've got a lot of co-hosts. So the last 2 weeks, Hody and Trisha and the others have kind of stepped in. And so that kind of, make sure that at least somebody's talking to the listeners about what's going on.
The only thing that's been, and this is kind of kind of dive into the main topic I kind of want to cover. The only reason why I'm able to do this is because I have so much extra time and leeway, because a lot of what I'm doing ties into work. So like during the work day, I can actually go on like another person's podcast as long as I somehow tie it into like my day job and stuff like that. And I got brought on to be a rotating panelist for a political talk show out of Arlington Public Access in Virginia. So like for all those things, like a lot of things tie into each other. So the personal and the professional have kind of blurred. And, you know, for some people, they could see that as a challenge. It's actually been really, really good for me. So when I complain about this stuff, it's never like, oh, I fucking have to do it. I do it because I love it. And it's one of the situations where it's like, I'm very lucky that, you know, under all these circumstances, I still have to do it. And it never feels like a chore, despite the fact that people think I'm sometimes phoning it in. It's because I'm literally fucking phoning it in, recording from the phone in some situations. So On the Run has become literal in most cases.
Yeah, I think I am at a point in my life where I've got my day job. I've got We Are Libertarians and all that comes with that. My different shows and, you know, and then I've got my podcast consulting business. And then I've got, you know, a family now. So just at some point, something breaks and you go, well, I guess this is the thing that I can break. My listeners will understand that, you know, the We Are Libertarians audience historically has been like my best friend. And when you just talk to them and you just say, here's what's going on, they've always, you know, except for Samantha Woties during my divorce, I was doing one episode a month. She's like, you got to really put them out. I'm like, listen, lady, I'm getting divorced.
How dare you talk to a man that way?
She was like, I don't care. I want my content. So yeah, I'm looking forward to like kind of getting set up and getting back to it, because I've just been so sporadic this year. And frankly, I've kind of been checked out of politics altogether because it doesn't have the same, I don't have the same passion for it. It's part of that ties into the topic today. Like, I've always been politically focused. I've been in politics for 20 years. I was driving downtown, you know, and saw the headquarters of the first place I volunteered for as a college Republican in 2002, you know, and I don't have the same belief that this can change things in the way that I used to. I think it's because politics has just fundamentally changed so much. It's weird to be under 40 and have something pass you by. But we are old enough, us older millennials, to live in an economy that doesn't reflect how it was when we were kids, or a political economy that isn't the same. You know, it's, I mean, everything I do for a living didn't exist when I graduated high school.
I still have to explain to my parents what digital marketing really is, because they think it's not even their fault. They think it's like posting things on Facebook, but it's a lot more than that. And the fact that part of my day job involves running and producing and hosting a podcast, it's another one of those situations where they're like, you get paid to do that, because it didn't exist. Like when I started working in this realm, I actually got my foot in the door through learning direct mail for fundraising. That was in 2015. Direct mail for fundraising. And then from there, I switched over digital. So in 2015, a lot of these things, well, there were people who could kind of do this. It was either in a marketing or communications role, and this was just part of it. Now this is an entire job.
Yeah.
And it's just so strange, because even now when people are like, where do you see the future of it in like 4 or 5 years? I'm like, I can't even tell you what it's going to be like next year. That's how fast these things change. But the ability to kind of keep on top of it is what keeps you in demand and keeps you relevant.
Yeah. And if you have done something one way for 20 years and then something changes, it's sort of like, do you really want to learn the new way? And that's sort of how I viewed it. I mean, the January 6th stuff, and I know that probably a lot of your listeners want to just dismiss that and pretend that it was nothing and that it was no big deal, and you're wrong, but that's okay. I think it was reflective of a new politics and a different type of politics that I don't want to learn how to do and I don't want to participate in. I mean, I think the the political media landscape has changed to a place that's just so much angrier and nastier. And so I've had to figure out a different way to do this. And, and it's led me to a point of the central question for today of,
God, you're such a better host than me.
I know.
At least let me ask the question.
Go ahead.
Well, no, now it's going to suck.
No, I think
the big question, Chris, and I really do want your insights on this, because while I definitely know that you've touched on it partially, I don't think it's ever been directly hit head on, especially post 2020, as we're all getting over our collective hangovers. It's this idea, and you see this a lot with like the internet libertarian talk that doesn't pertain to 99% of America, but I think it is a broader question. For us to achieve a better sense of freedom in our daily lives, is the course for people who know about these topics and care about these things that we care about. Is the future a dead-on collision with having to continue this fight through the political realm, or by finding a different way? And I think for the most part, for people that kind of know what I'm talking about, it comes down to this. Do we continue to work through party politics, primarily through the Libertarian Party, we'll use an example, or do we try and find a way to become, basically our I'm not going to say sovereign citizen. That's fucking crazy with how many people have taken it. But this idea of somebody who has, a degree of freedom because they control their wealth, they have the freedom to move, and they have rare and specialized skills so that they can be in demand in this global economy. So regardless as to what government actions necessarily hit you, you have the most options available to decide how you want to deal with that. And, like 5 years ago, I totally would have been on one end of it. And I shifted. I was like, we'll go ahead and focus on the Republican Party. And then it was around the time where I was working at GameStop in 2018, having already been a best-selling author too. I was like, where did I fucking go wrong? And it's been this giant journey where now, I'm debt-free. I'm financially independent. I'm out of the I'm out of the guard. I have a job where I work hybrid, but I have a very rare and specialized set of skills where it still allows me to freelance with other clients outside my immediate realm. So I have constant streams of passive and active income. And when things have really, gotten really scary over the past year with the pandemic and personal stuff, the one thing that has kept me afloat has been my ability to control the source of my money, as well as my ability to get out of bad situations. I mean, if you had told me a year ago I'd be in Wisconsin, I'd be like, you got to pass the fucking reefer, because that's obviously not happening. But now I'm looking at it.
I'm lactose intolerant. I can't do this.
But it's in one of these situations where it's like despite the fact that I think we objectively live in a less free world than even compared to where we were, let's say 20 years ago, I myself am living a freer and happier life as a result of just focusing on those things. And I don't say this to say completely opt out of politics. I'll be honest. I made a political donation to a friend of mine who's running for city council in another state. Why? Because I could. Yeah. But it's one of those situations where people think it has to be an all or nothing thing. And I'm seeing primarily, like, if I had to take a side, it would totally be the side of make yourself more independent, more free. Because the people that I'm seeing argue against that, they're like, oh, you're just saying everyone should get rich and all this other stuff. You need to speak truth to power. And it's like, there's no nobility in poverty. And there's no nobility in constantly wondering how you're going to be victimized next. And that's what really bothers me. And the thing, if we're going to turn this into a therapy session, the past month, I have received many messages from listeners who I really don't think listen to the show, but I got roped in somehow. And they're saying, you just sound so pessimistic and all this other stuff. I mean, it's been at least 4 or 5 people in the last 2 weeks. And it's this whole, what you're saying is unobtainable. I'm in my 40s and I'm working 3 jobs and this other stuff. And it's like, good for you doing the right thing, working, trying to keep food on the table for your family. But I've also run out of fucking sympathy.
The victim mentality of libertarians now, they've adopted the Trump psychology, and the Republican. I mean, a lot of libertarians are right leaning, and the constant victimhood is just exhausting. You absolutely. I'm a dumbass. And I have managed to get myself to several streams of income that provide me and my family a great living now. And I work all the time and I work really hard. And you know, I don't know what to tell people who just, you can't get financially free. Well, I'm a recovering overspender. Yes, you can. If you're like, you know, I would have totally gone and bought that weed eater brand new at Home Depot, but instead I went to a pawn shop and saved myself $100. You know, I don't know. I just think I get so tired of having an opinion on the internet and then just you think about something before you know this, Remso. When you say something on the internet, generally you have taken some time to think about that. You've investigated it. You've put some brain power to it. Maybe you've taken a couple weeks to formulate this and research it. And then there's always one guy who's like, nuh-uh, you know, and it's always like a guy with a Punisher thing on Twitter.
Oh, and the thin blue line going through the skull.
Yeah. I mean, I think that, you know, what I've kind of been working through over the last year as I look at starting this new business and starting podcasting and platforms, teaching people how to kind of build what I've built here with the We Are Libertarians network has been a painful psychological transition for me because I'm good at promoting other people's stuff. But if it comes to promoting me, I'm terrible at it. There's like a mental break when it comes to promoting myself. And it's not humility, it's insecurity. And, you know, I have a business coach that I work with, and she, you know, I was telling her a story about, you know, working with my dad and working through some entrepreneurial stuff. And she goes, yeah, I used to be afraid of rich people too. and I went, what? And the story that I had just told totally was me being scared of rich people, you know, and like what I've kind of found is that because of my own insecurity and lack of comfort with myself in a lot of ways, I'm afraid of being successful. I'm afraid of being rich. I'm afraid of rich people. I'm afraid of people who have power. And it's because I have felt powerless so much of my life. And the more I gain in terms of my own self-esteem, my own savings, my own control of my own career instead of outsourcing it to a boss or a company, the less afraid I am of all that stuff and the less typical libertarian personality I become, right? And that's kind of part of the disconnect that I have with so many people who've listened to me for 10 years is that I just kind of find a lot of insecurity and weakness in the movement that I inhibited myself, right? Like the libertarian movement is largely a Peter Pan movement of boys who don't want to grow up, who are afraid of success, who are afraid of doing well by themselves. And it's kind of pathetic. And they'll enable themselves, you know, if they get into a group, a caucus, if you will, that can kind of support that typical Peter Pan behavior because of the edginess, then it keeps them comfortable. It inhibits their growth. Whereas if you say to them, you know, so we can change this, we can do this, we can make the world a better place through politics, it becomes sort of an enabling thing for them to stay in their mother's basement like I've been in. But when you go out and build an institution, you know, when you build a media company, when you build, you know, We Are Libertarians now has sponsorships and advertising. I never wanted to do advertising because the vulnerability of trying to sell ads on our network was too scary to me. And I had all
I'd like to thank Geico for bringing you this episode.
Right. You know, like you mean rightly. Right. But yeah, I mean, the reality is I didn't want to do it. And I had all kinds of excuses because I didn't want to push myself. You know, and as we have started to look at We Are Libertarians as more of a trying to build an institution or trying to build something, you know, outside of just a bunch of goofballs screwing around with their friends and into something that could long-term be something more successful, it makes you uncomfortable. You know, being a grown-up is uncomfortable. I was never that uncomfortable in politics and in the Libertarian Party because I didn't have to grow up. And I don't know if any of that makes sense to you, Remso, but
I was talking with so I did a special Saturday segment for Brian's show, the Brian Nichols show, last week. And it was I did it pretty last minute because I wanted it to be something meaningful. And what I did on that, and I'll link to it in the show notes, is I basically discussed kind of like what we're talking about today, like where the shift for me came. And the shift for me came when I was sleeping in the back of my Kia Soul after having knocked doors all day for one of my favorite candidates. And I realized that I wasn't making any money from this and that I had just been promised a lot of stuff. And when I was asking myself, in those like 7-Eleven parking lots at 1 a.m., what success looks like, I began to think that the things I'm asking for that I think are possible are actually monumentally, cosmically impossible. I'm thinking I'm going to get this person elected and they're going to end the Fed and bring the troops home. But how am I going to pay for gas to get home from this when this is over? Because election day will come and go. And for them, win or lose, their lives are probably better as a result of it because they either win and go on and do other stuff or they lose and they get a book deal or a radio segment or whatever. But I'm still left with the rest of my life. And, you know, I've lost more races than I participated in one, but like even the wins, as years go by, they begin to diminish in their returns. But I can't tell you how amazing I felt when I saved my first $10,000 in cash.
Yes,
and
because you can control it, Remso. The reality is that you are not on an FBI watch list.
Actually,
you may be, but those people listening,
that one, yeah, like
the reality, but you know the type, like, and we've said it to ourselves a million times on this podcast over the years. Like, there's no way we're not on a list. There's no way we're not these amazing revolutionaries. Like, we're not. Like, and the thing that was the coldest water in my face was producing the Leaders and Legends podcast over the last 2 or 3 years, going and sitting down with the wealthiest, most powerful people in politics and every other sector of Indianapolis. None of them know who I was. And I am probably, with the exception of maybe Brad Kloffenstein and Mark Rutherford, the most prominent Indiana libertarian, because of being in the media for 20 years, working in politics, being the head of the Libertarian Party of Indiana. None of those people knew who I was. We had no impact on Indiana politics. And it was a hard pill to swallow that you didn't really make a lot of impact. But what I did get out of the Libertarian Party was lifelong friendships, a sense of belonging, a path where I'm at now with We Are Libertarians, a ton of knowledge about how my government works and how you can influence around the edges. You can influence candidates and what the people who get elected do. You can, like Rush County Libertarian Party shows up to this county council meeting with a video camera, puts it on YouTube, and $100 million project gets canceled. So you can have an effect, but on the overall system, it's a pretty anemic effect if you're in the Libertarian Party. Now, should you run in the Republican Party? It's going to be the same thing. Look at Justin Amash. There was a sense of joy in Justin Amash saying to me, like, it's harder in the Republican Party. So
I mean, I would argue that, I'm targeting the LP, but I mean, I'm really talking about just the sense of playing for rules that you are bound by that other people aren't.
Right.
Yeah. And it's one of those things where it's like, I remember a good friend of mine called me about a year and a half ago. It was like right before COVID started. And he was like, I just got out of the military. I'm involved in my local GOP. I'm really wondering, because you and I are more alike than anything else. He's never really called himself a libertarian, but he basically is. He was like, should I run as a Republican where I'm going to have to compromise and where I'm going to have to play more of a party guy? Or do I run as a libertarian or an independent or be what I really like? And I asked him, what is it you really want to get out of running? And he told me, well, I want my community to be better. And I'm like, why do you think politics is the way to achieve that? Because at this point, I had already had that mental shift. And I basically told him, listen, like, if you really want to do this to win, run as a Republican. If you really want to do this to be an education campaign, run as an independent or a libertarian. But then I was like, how about you just hunker down work with your wife on your finances, get involved, try and like really become as independent from outside sources as possible, and be that trusted figure in your own community that people go to because they want to, and not because you're the person telling them that you have the answers to stuff. Be a philanthropist, be a business owner. And after that, like, he started a business, and now he's starting to build that local name recognition, and people are coming to him because they see this guy has his act together and he's a good force of good for the community.
Yeah, through 2020, I hosted a nonprofit focused radio show here in Indianapolis, and those people are starved for volunteers, money, people talking about them. I mean, the reality is that I've kind of ended up, on the side of build your own institution. If you're going to put energy into something, build up a nonprofit that exists, start a nonprofit, start a media company, start a business that solves a problem for your community. Be an entrepreneur. What's the social entrepreneur? Because politics in this day and age is not community focused. That's bullshit. It is about building the reputation and email list of the person running. It is about Jim Banks is this congressman here in Indiana from the 3rd District that I used to really love and respect. When I was head of the LPIN, he would meet with us. He would hear our concerns, spent 2 hours with him in the Antelope Club, hearing why do we disagree with him on gay marriage, for instance. Well known as a state senator, as a guy that just was very fair and open and balanced. Well, somewhere along 2020, Jim Banks decided he wanted to run for governor and completely changed his personality. He's on Fox News every night. He's head of the Republican Study Committee. And it's just, hot takes down the middle, trying to get the Fox News viewer to give him money. And so here's a guy who sold out, who I imagine deep down is still the same Jim Banks that I knew and respected, but has decided that he can't be that guy to be successful. He's got to be a Tucker Carlson clone to build his email list. And if his campaigns in the future don't work out, then at least he's got a spot on the Sunday shows and a big Fox News contract coming. That's what politics is now. Politics is a predatory business, and maybe it's always been that way and we're foolish. But it is a predatory kleptocracy that wants to build up the person's individual political power. And if you are volunteering for a Republican or Democratic campaign, you are participating in that system that, whether known or unknown, is abusive and harmful, especially to poor people. If you are a poor person in this country, I don't know how you make it. Trying to look for a place, taking 2 months to find a house, was unbelievably eye-opening. The housing crisis has started to reach into the middle class. And my apartment complex that I've lived in was a great place to live. But, I'm starting to see a lot of the people being pushed out of gentrified areas in my apartment complex. And so I have a friend that works in the office. I'm like, why? Well, you have to now have 3 times earnings to get an apartment there. And everybody kind of knows that this apartment complex doesn't really check your Photoshop documents. And all the other places in town do. And so you literally have to commit fraud to get an apartment if you're in your early 20s now. If you're getting out of college, you have to have 2 years experience plus a bachelor's degree. These things have changed wildly in the last 5 years. Well, none of that is because of anything other than politicians passing bureaucratic laws to run on re-election to gain power for themselves. We're building this house of cards to promote politicians. And I don't know why you'd want to participate in it when you should really put that energy into promoting your interests in what you said. Get yourself financially stable, build another stream of income or 3, work with a nonprofit that solves a problem that you deeply care about. There's no point in going and participating in the, and I know that you think that the one that you like is a good guy. I know that you think that Rand Paul really has your interest at heart, but you're being fooled. You're a fool.
Oh, I've got a story for you. I used to really, really freaking love Ted Cruz.
Yeah, I voted for Ted Cruz in 2016.
Yeah.
I agree with you.
I had to unfollow Ted Cruz on all social media. And I did that with a few other politicians. I still like them. Them was not the problem. What I saw was the problem is me. In 2016 Remso was so wrapped up in this idea that Ted Cruz was like this political and cultural messiah, that if I just did everything in my power to try and get him the nomination and then try and make that man president, all my wildest dreams could come true. And that turned out to just be the biggest drain in my entire life, because like everything else, his life moved on, win or lose. His life is objectively better. My life, on the other hand, was shit. And it got to that point where I realized that I found my identity through a person or through an organization. And that's where I really stay off of Twitter arguments now, especially with, the fact that the majority of the people that I interact with are libertarian or in somewhere in that spectrum. And like, they really hate, and I'll bring Jason Stapleton, for example. He got so much hate when he rebranded his show, and he still gets a lot of hate now because he's really been like on one side of this argument of party versus person. We'll call it that. And you've got all these people and these libertarians. So what's weird is that they're almost talking like communists in a way. It's all about the greater community, greater collective. Stop thinking about yourself. Just focus on this. And what they find is that they hate other people who have achieved something that is really hard. Whereas when a person fails doing something for themselves, they fail. When a person working through an institution fails, they don't even get that failure. They just push it off on somebody else. So these people have found their identities through politicians, or in this case, or through a party. And that pushes away the responsibility, the good or the bad, because then what they get to do is they can still take it. They can still take victories over other people's achievements. Wow, look at what Dave Smith did. Wow, look at what Joe Jorgensen did. And they get to see that as a personal victory when nothing in their life has changed as a result of that.
It's like being a sports fan. Like, you are literally putting on a jersey, cosplaying a victory by your team, cheering on the achievements of other men, and contributed nothing to that process. The reality is that a lot of the people getting involved in politics right now kind of became politically awake in the last few years, and they have no experience, and they don't know what is ahead. I know what's ahead. They don't listen to me because I retired from the Libertarian Party essentially in 2012, a long time before a lot of these people were politically active. And I do mean to shit on the Libertarian Party a little bit, and it's not their fault. It's like this in every party. Politics is a great thing to get into for networking and to be a part of a community. But if you believe that getting involved is going to actually change anything on a systemic wide scale, I just don't see it happening. You're going to make a lot of great friends, and you're going to make a lot of great connections. And that's why you should get involved. But don't be naive in that your world is going to markedly or even mildly improve beyond that because of your political involvement. And if you take the Jason Stapleton route and you build a business that employs people and gives you so much income at the end of the year that you can donate to churches and charities and schools and issues that you care about, not only is your world improved, but the people around you. So I just don't think it's even a contest. It's people who have no political experience saying to me, who has political experience, it's going to be different this time. Okay. Yeah. Well, I'll be waiting here for you with an ice pack when you realize that I'm right and you're not. I mean, it's just, you really have to focus on what is most important for you and your self-interests.
I tell
by
this,
doing that, you're going to improve things in a lot of ways. So I agree with Jason on this. It took me a long time to accept that, and I don't like it because I'd love to sit here and say, like, all that money you're donating to candidates and all the time you're donating to a party or a county party is worth it. But you gotta understand what value, look at the value, right? Like, if you want more friends and you want to be involved in your community and make good networking connections, there's no better place than politics. But go into it for that. Like, don't let your heart get broken.
Yeah, I mean, the intention, and I think this is what you're really trying to summarize, like the intention is what's the important thing. Because, I mean, for me, the problem that I found is that my expectations were too high. So that way, no matter, even when I won, I was still losing something in the process because I wasn't getting the results I wanted. My good friend Tom Garrett, for example, who was he was the first person I ever worked for who won a race. He went to Congress. Tom Garrett, one of the most libertarian Republicans ever, served 2 terms. He said it himself enough times. Compared to when he was in the state Senate in Virginia, he got nothing done. It was the most unproductive 2 years, worst 2 years of his life. And now he's off, being a voice for refugees and for people who have had their lives ruined because of sectarian violence and religious persecution throughout the Middle East and North Africa. And he's like, this is my purpose. And it came to one of those situations where it's just like, where you're setting your intention is where you're going to get the results. And I mean, I get this with, a lot of what I talk about on here is like, how can you find easy ways to expand your income pool through side hustles, through creating stuff, through trying to find different ways. And what I get a lot of is, well, I just don't have time to do that. And it's like, that's a lie. That is actually a lie. You actually do have the time to do it because you and Bill Gates both have the same thing. You both have 24 hours in a day. And, if anyone ever told you it was going to be easy and you were just going to make 6 figures in a year, that's just not true. It's just not true. It's hard work because if it was easy, everyone would be doing it. But it's one of those situations where it's like they would rather be, how do I phrase this? They would rather be right and stay a victim than put in the work and fail, because it's like this inside voice saying, well, if you fail, other people will go ahead and, attack you for this, use you as a point of saying it could never be done. I mean, a lot of people are their own worst enemies in that. And one thing I've been talking about a lot is this idea of the hero's journey. The difference between the hero and the person who stays back is leaving that sense of familiarity. And I will definitely say for me, like when I really left politics, it was around the time I went to work at the Washington Times. I'd cut off all like political ties and everything like that for the most part. It was scary because I lost my community. I lost a lot of my friends, all that sense of stuff. I was in media. It was brand new. It was completely brand new because, we were a conservative leaning paper, but like it was a business. Like they don't care about who wins the election. They care about whether or not they get enough people to buy into the classified section to make our overhead. So it was one of those situations where it's like, and I think people, they think you only have to do this once in your life. It's a continual thing. The difference between the hero and where they are in the place of familiarity versus when they go to confront the antagonist or their challenge is those that leave the familiar. And I've met far too many people who had nothing, who left that sense of security and familiarity, who went on that journey, who succeeded, then who failed. Because no one ever really disrespects the person who left and tried and put their heart into it and failed, not because of something they did, but because that's just how the die was cast, versus the people that just talk shit and never left the Shire. Yeah. They're the useless hobbits.
I like if back to the central question, politics is predatory. Political involvement in every aspect of our life sucks. Why would we continue to support people that are like furthering that? And the Republican Party is completely useless because they have given up on trying to limit government and reduce the size and scope of it. And now we're focused on wrestling for the gun so they can shoot the other guy. So I don't want to participate in that. And so what's left? It's the social sphere. It's not the political sphere. It's the economic sphere. It's, things like Bitcoin. And I guess we should argue whether or not you should be involved at all. Like you take Bitcoin, that is a revolutionary technology that can liberate entire communities, entire countries. But if you're not politically involved and can't fight off the coming regulation, Preet Bharara or whatever his name is had the SEC guy on to talk about how they're going to regulate Bitcoin. Because Preet was very concerned about this dangerous technology. And you've got to have mechanisms to fight that stuff. With the lockdowns, you've got to have a Ron DeSantis being the a-hole to fight that stuff. But it takes a special type of asshole to be that guy. Are you, the listener, that guy? Maybe some of you are. I'm not. So I'm going to put my time and energy into building up. I guess I don't. I'm coming here, Remso, agreeing kind of with you on this, but I don't know where to take it. Right. Because for 20 years, my answer was the political sphere is necessary. We need to be engaged in this. And after things have shifted so far in the last 5 years, be it I've shifted or politics has shifted or both, I don't know where to go exactly next. You tell me.
So it's funny. It's funny you bring up Bitcoin, because this is really the only tangible example for a lot of my clients. And to be completely, open on this one, I accept Bitcoin from some of my clients. I won't go into further that, but what I do say is that I do accept Bitcoin as a form of payment. I accept all types of crypto, except Doge as a form of payment. That's a personal thing. But, my thing is I am open to doing that. When I've had other people ask me, how do you do it? Why do you do it this way? I go into it. But the biggest thing is if you're going to accept Bitcoin or any other type of crypto, pay your taxes. Pay your taxes. And some libertarians hear that and they're like, fuck no, why would I do that? I'm like, don't put that big of a target over your head, because if you're going to start accepting large amounts of payment in crypto, you can't hide. So pay your taxes. And the other thing is, in the past 6 months, especially as they've been, ramping up for the infrastructure bill and everything, Washington has reported a record number of lobbyists representing small and large crypto firms, the number one being Coinbase. Coinbase, whether people like it or not, is really the number one exchange in the world. And I'm saying this as a Coinbase shareholder. I own stock in the company. And the reason why is because they understand that they can't exist in a world without regulation. So they can either be there at the table or not, and just completely get drowned out. And, when I saw what was going on, and because I believe in this technology and why I believe that Bitcoin and other cryptos are currencies, not securities, I bought in, and I broke one of my rules. I bought into a non-dividend paying company. Why? Because I own enough that I can vote when they go ahead and make mass shareholder decisions. I have a say in it. But, I don't own hundreds of thousands of dollars in Coinbase stock, but it's even because I do to a degree, I invested in it because I believe in the company and I believe that it is actually charging ahead in this field. It gave me an opportunity where it's I could take X amount of dollars and I can put it here and I can keep it there. And I'm not going to need that money. I'm not going to need it to pay bills. I'm not going to need it for groceries. I could just put it there and not even have it, earn me dividends. And it will probably go down in value, but now I'm an equity holder. And that was something I would never be able to do. And that's just one small area. But it's I've got a friend who's a city council member. He won in a seat where I had managed campaigns for different candidates for multiple cycles and nobody ever won it. And he finally did. And he stood up against mask mandates and vaccine passports and higher taxes and higher water bills and all these things that were just crushing people. And he was like, I've got people, I need money. So here I was like, you know what, dude, I'm going to write you a check right now. I'm going to write you a check so big, people are going to see my name on your disclosure. And it was one of those moments where it's here I am, I've been able to achieve this. And now I'm actually shaping the world I want outside of government and still shaping it through cooperation.
Yeah. You've worked in politics before. Who's in charge?
Donors.
The people writing the check.
Certainly not the candidate.
The most powerful person on any campaign staff is the fundraiser. Because what they say the donors want is what ends up happening. not the media guy, not the grassroots director, the guy that organizes the volunteers, or gal, is the least power. Like, unless it's like some freak campaign like Barack Obama in 2008, and they have millions of people volunteering.
Everyone and their grandma was on Obama 2008.
Yeah, I was arguing with a guy last night, who my new brother-in-law, who is a little more along the monarchist libertarian line than I am. I'm a classical liberal.
There are dozens of them, literally dozens of them.
Liberal democratic capitalism has freed a lot of people from poverty and is the best road to freedom. But I do buy the argument that most people are too stupid to. He was saying basically like increasing involvement has not led to better outcomes. And I agree. But I also see the people in Rush County kind of getting involved in their local community. You're never going to get back to localism unless people do show up to county council meetings. Like what I would like to see is less running for office, more going to city council meetings, less going to party meetings, more going to county council meetings, because that's going to give you more influence over decision makers if you don't have deep pockets. I've seen it time and time again when people go and show up at those city council meetings, and build a relationship with their local representative, they can have influence. It's just that most people don't do it. And so therefore the people who make decisions listen to their donors because they're the only group of people actually influencing it. I mean, I'm sure you've seen it time and time again when a local population gets pissed off and decides to get involved, the thing that was inevitable no longer happens. But nobody really wants to be consistent. So I don't know how we build an anarchist society when nobody wants to show up and work in government. And that's what I always say to the guy who's like ready to throw on, his machine gun onto his Jeep and invade the Capitol. I'm like, name your congressman. You have representative government that you don't exercise. Like, actually get involved that way as opposed to running for office. So I guess if political involvement is the path to change, that's how I would say it works. I had a guy, I've said this forever. We Are Libertarians patron. He had just bought chickens. His town outlawed chickens. He went and got lunch with the guy.
How do you outlaw chickens?
They were trying to get rid of the backyard chicken movement in Texas.
There was a backyard chicken movement
in Texas, of all places. And so he took the guy out to lunch, and the guy went back, amended his proposal to like 4 chickens or something because Jason took the time to just go and sit down and have lunch with him. So that's where you can make changes if you actually like are respectful and nice and have a conversation. You're all demon worshipers and eating babies and it doesn't work. But you will have influence and power if you have money and if you show up to the right places. But a Libertarian Party meeting, a Southside Democratic Club meeting, these are not places where you're really going to like influence a lot of people in terms of decision makers.
I had people who knew I voted for Trump who flew across the country to DC on January 6th. And they were all like, bro, why aren't you here? Come here. We can grab lunch afterwards. Come on, man. You're right there. I flew from California to be here. And I straight up said no, because it's a waste of my fucking time. And I worked because I was unemployed at the time too. And I had some clients. So I'm like, I'm going to work because it's done. Whether you like it or not, it's done. And it's not going to, you showing up there if all your other people, you complain about so many things, but the things you can take active control in by you taking time and money and resources to be there, you're actively saying those things aren't important to you. You say they're important to you, but they're not important to you. And, out of respect for this gentleman, I won't say his name, but we had a member of the We Are Libertarians network who was a very vocal Joe Biden supporter. And I just, like me and him butted heads, but right before the election, I actually put out an election episode, and I think it was called something like Who I'm Voting For and Why It Doesn't Matter. And what I talked about in that episode, which people can go back and listen to, is that irregardless as to who wins or loses the presidential election or who keeps a majority or whatever in the Senate and the House, my game plan for myself does not change. And while it might be a minor inconvenience one way or another, it doesn't affect me because I've prioritized certain things in my life that maximize my own freedom and my own access to opportunities. And he got really pissy and he was like, well, you're just saying that because you know how it's going to go down. So then the election happens, and months later, because we went months without a president, this person who was so pro-Biden just got so betrayed when Biden did other things and felt so lost and was just mad and just completely just rage quit so many things. And, there's a person who on election night was like, decency won, or like the good guys won. And he's calling all these other people losers. And I just kind of stayed out of it. And, for the most part, 2021, despite a lot of shit, has been a good year for me. And I don't care as much about those things because they haven't immediately impacted my plan for myself. And I can go back and listen to that episode and I wouldn't change a single thing about what I said because it was consistent with what was the priority. How am I maximizing my freedom and how am I making my life better for me and those immediately around me? Because I can't change somebody in another state. I can't change somebody in another country, but I can immediately make good beneficial actions in my life and those around me. And that's where I can measure the change.
Well, my disagreement with a lot of libertarians, including sometimes you, is that, Trump's harmless. Trump's the same predatory swamp monster as everybody else, and we should oppose him. I am concerned.
But he was my swamp monster, Chris. He was mine.
I hate all presidents, but you can't have that position and be fooled and think that Joe Biden was going to come in and save you from anything. He was always going to come in and completely,
do you know why I say that George Bush, in my opinion, was the worst president? Actually, let me say this. Do you know why I say George Bush was a worse president than Barack Obama and why that pisses off my family?
Because he was.
Because he was. Because he was. And really, Obama didn't do anything George Bush either wasn't actively doing or was on the course to continue doing had the Democrats not taken control of the House in 2005. Yeah. Like he was just the same. So when I see all the fiscal conservatives come out now arguing about inflation and the debt, it would be a lie if I said, motherfuckers, you people voted for it 3 times last year.
Yeah, I really had forgotten so much of George Bush until I went and was researching the 9/11 episode, and I don't know how Dick Cheney isn't in jail. I still maintain that I think Donald Trump was more destructive to politics, but Donald Trump's politics is kind of just a continuation of George Bush's politics in terms of just destroying the country. You cannot look at those wars, especially Iraq, and not see everything that came after. That documentary on PBS that basically was 9/11 to January 6th and was the after effects of the Bush presidency and the wars was so great. And it just basically showed how.
Is that Ken Burns documentary?
It was, and it was a Frontline PBS documentary. It was really good. I wish I forget what the War on Terror era or something. It was so good because it just shows you how the seeds were planted in that era for so much of the problems that we face now, from George Bush's housing initiatives to 2008 to the housing crisis we're undergoing now, to the fake news fallout. It was so good. So I'm with you. George Bush, top 5 worst presidents for sure.
Yeah. And it just comes down to that situation where it's as much as I don't like Biden, the thing is I can't do much in the meantime. And certainly going around talking about the bad things he's doing. One, you can get that from a million other people who are smarter and better and more connected than me. So I'm not contributing much to that. But it's like, if you want to learn how to repeat the tools for success that this moron behind the microphone did,
hey,
I'm the moron in this case.
Oh.
I'm the moron. Like, if you want to follow this moron's advice for how to be a more comfortable moron, I've got the stuff that can help you out. And it's one of those situations where it's like, yeah, my life is weird because I am freer and happier now in a much less free and unhappy world than the one I grew up in. And, it's,
you've said that a couple of times, and I don't know that I totally agree. I was on this call with like 10 other libertarian podcasters, and even Pete Quinones was like, well, I guess we're more free and that people hate the cops more.
Oh, I'm not talking about everyone else. I'm just talking me. Like, the world is going to shit, but I'm actually okay.
I know, but I think here's the thing. I want to be weirdly optimistic here because I go back and forth. I vacillate because I agree with you in that the world isn't more free. But like, if you were a gay person 20 years ago, you are more free today than you were. If you are a dope smoking, gun toting gay person, you're definitely more free than you used to be. If you are, a dope smoking, gun toting gay person that works on the internet, you have a lot more freedom. I mean, so I think there's a weird feeling in this country, and that we are not more free than we were 20 years ago. And I think that's because regulations are hitting us more directly. The Barack Obama era added so many regulations that that's one of the best things Trump did was trying to cut as many regulations as possible. Although he kind of stopped, but we are more free in a lot of different ways.
I'm only going to disagree with you because in 2020, when you had people literally shutting down businesses, and now
there's no doubt about that.
Yeah. Like, I think that really, I want to agree with you, but that was what really kind of showed me. It's like, I'm not very optimistic about this.
The levers of control. There are things like I said, regulations. You take the smoking ban, for instance, here in Indianapolis. We opposed it as the Libertarian Party, Marion County. We said you are building mechanisms that will come back to haunt you later. When the pandemic hit, the Marion County smoking ban mechanisms were used to shut down those businesses.
Oof.
And all those Republican city councilors that voted for it, I didn't, but I wanted to text them and go, bitch, I was right. So there are things like that I think that those mechanisms have built to encroach and creep in on freedoms. There have always been periods like that, and there's always a backlash. And so I think the thing that I was most surprised by and most wrong on in 2020 is that the population would see it, get it, and oppose a lot of this stuff, and they didn't. There's no doubt that in like size and scope, in terms of encroachment on personal liberty, there's no bigger encroachment than the lockdowns. Now, in terms of moral outrage, slavery's winning on that one. Okay. But, in terms of, I mean, 2020 was just a stunning, and it depends. Like, Remso, you are an idiot because you lived in Virginia. I don't know if where Brian is at, but hopefully he's in a moving truck between here and Philadelphia. Because I've said to both of you, the pandemic ended for me in July 2020. You idiots living in blue states, that's your own dumb fault. So yeah, I mean, the reality is that the pandemic kind of showed why you need to respect the Constitution and the Republic, because I mean, we had a really terrible lockdown. Compared to I don't know. I mean, it wasn't really terrible compared to most other red states. It was pretty comparable, except for South Dakota. But after July 4th, 2020, there was nothing that you were limited by nothing. I mean, I was going to the gym, like, there were still like some restaurant capacity things. At that point in Indiana, people's behavioral changes affected the economy in that not as many people are going to restaurants and things like that. That was always going to be there. But you idiots in blue states that just voted in Gavin Newsom, I don't know what's wrong with you people. But here,
telling me that you were surprised that liberal California acted like liberal California.
Right. It's full of Democrats. I think Larry Elder's going to win. Oh wait, they're still full of Democrats. Never mind. Yeah, I mean, so no, there's no doubt. I mean, but you kind of, if you had a Democratic governor, you got what you voted for.
And you see, like, if I hadn't had the skill set I had to look outside of my state, like, I don't know, like, I was working in a warehouse, like, right up until I took the job and moved here to Wisconsin. Like, that's how scary things got at one point. And, it's one of the situations where it's like, even though I'm in a blue state here in Wisconsin, it's a very bright purple state. And for the most part, like, I don't get as mad as a lot of other right-leaning people do here, because I've seen how abjectly horrible it could be. So I look around and I'm like, this is fine. And they're like, you think this is fine? I'm like, you don't know what I've been through. But
I was in Atlanta two weekends ago, and this girl was here from Ottawa, Canada, and she's trying to get her dual citizenship now because she couldn't believe the amount of freedom that people had in Philadelphia. It was Baltimore and Atlanta.
Wow.
And I'm sure that if you talk to your average Republican or Libertarian in Baltimore or Atlanta, you're deeply, grossly oppressed. But to an Ottawa resident, it was just beautiful freedom. They just passed, and Trudeau won after putting this stuff in place. They just are enforcing new lockdowns in Canada, and she's a wedding cake decorator. And so they were forcing all of the wedding parties to submit vaccine cards to the venue to submit to the government to show that all your guests were vaccinated.
Wow.
And she lost $4,000 in business in a single month because people just canceled their weddings because their grandma's not vaccinated, so they can't have the wedding. So it's all a matter of perspective, I guess. And that's the beauty of the 50 states, is that you Virginia residents can move to Wisconsin and have beautiful freedom.
So much beer and cheese curds. And the Brewers. Go Brewers. It's little things like that where it's like, I'm not a millionaire. I don't think I'll ever really be a millionaire anytime soon. But, like, my whole goal was, and it's so odd with the timing of when On the Run started with how the world turned. It's gotten to the point where it's like I'm free now because I can go to sleep at night knowing that things can happen and I'll still have money coming in throughout the month, that I can still move around freely, and that I have access to different things, different networks, different areas where, like, shit can go down again, and I'm not going to let it affect me the way it did last time. But to kind of close things off, because now I think I've reached the point of being the Chad podcaster level, I have to talk about doing jiu-jitsu recently. What I've loved about doing it so far, and I've been kind of throwing out little anecdotes throughout the last couple episodes as I've been trying to just bludgeon people over the head with it, is that when I was looking for gyms in the area, and there's a lot of jiu-jitsu gyms in and around Milwaukee, I called a couple of them and I was just like, what did you do during the lockdowns? And some of them closed down because their students just disenrolled. Others adapted. They did Zoom jiu-jitsu, which I don't know how the fuck you do that. But like with my school, like,
come here, kitty. It's time to
let's grab the waifu pillow or something. The school I'm going to now, they're basically just like, we didn't lock down. And right now, COVID's a fact of life. And if you're worried about catching COVID here at the gym, jiu-jitsu is probably not for you, because worse things can happen.
Yeah.
And like, the people that go to this gym have become some of my favorite people to see throughout the week, because it's an extremely diverse group of people in thought and in background and in profession and in so many other things. And I don't know where they land on certain issues, but like, we are all the same. We're all just here to get better. And the people who have come into the gym are a lot like myself. They needed a community. They wanted to better themselves. One of the things I struggled with for a while on my path to overall freedom has been health freedom. Since I left the military, since I've gained weight, since I've lost all this other stuff, I lost that edge part of me where it's like, I'm a dangerous person. And I got to the point where it's like, I'm actually not anymore.
You're dangerous to a box of Twinkies.
I'm dangerous to a lot of things, the Twinkies included. But like, it got to the point where it's like, now I'm getting that sense of confidence back. And in that confidence is freedom. where it's like, I know that if shit goes down, like I do enough crazy shit during the week, I should be good against an untrained person, an untrained, unarmed person. But it's one of those situations where it's like, it's not just me in that case. It's everyone else I am training with. And we are all the same under jujitsu in this most part. Yeah. And it's just been an amazing thing because some people are just there because they want to fight other dudes. Some people are just there because they just wanted to stay in shape. But a lot of other people were there because they're like, this is the most consistent thing in my life right now. And I feel like an amazing person each time I leave.
Yeah.
And it's like, that is freedom. That is confidence. And the ability to do that. It's like you're taking time out of your day where you could be doing so many other things. You see the results every class, every time you step on the scale.
Like if you're talking about the essential pieces of a person, it's your mental well-being, get to therapy, 4 years of therapy. I mean, go look at my fiance. It's impossible for old me to have
human trafficking.
Other than that. Maintained a relationship with a person as stable, normal, and as beautiful as Reagan. There's the physical realm. You've got to take care of yourself. The spiritual realm, whatever your spiritual side is, I encourage you. I'm a Christian.
I call it sense of purpose.
I feel like a shittier person. Your financial side, there's when you list off the essential fundamental pieces of what a person is, the political side isn't there. You don't need a political side to be a happy, healthy, functioning person. And if you are, if that is one of your things, you're probably not functioning well. It's why I was broke, 330 pounds, getting divorced, because I was a workaholic working for a political party. Because I was not spiritually in the right place that I needed to be. Like, politics is not an essential function of being a happy, healthy person. But I think we're going to expand liberty when we do find those pieces and start working to engage the world in ways that improve other people's spiritual well-being, financial well-being, physical well-being, and helping build other people. You're engaging in politics, you're basically trying to fight people and take something from somebody else to give it to your team. And that's not how a functioning society works. So question answered, we win.
Yeah, every day. And I'm happier. I mean, that's the one metric nobody can measure but you.
Yep.
And, that's one of those things where it's like through many years, I had to really understand, like, happiness is not a natural state of a person. It's a very intentional choice. It's how you achieve that. That's the most important thing. Chris, thank you for showing proof of life on the keyboard. We all appreciate it. How can people go ahead and listen to the Chris Spangle Show? Because obviously we've got one or two that don't.
Yes. Listen on any podcast platform, the Chris Spangle Show. Check out all my different projects at chris-spangle.com.
Awesome. Folks, as always, it costs you nothing but means everything to me. A 5-star rating and review on any platform, Apple, if you're really awesome. Across Al Gore's amazing internet, we'll go ahead and let people know about the fantastic topics and conversations we're having here every Monday and Thursday. As always, be safe, be good. Good night.